Is Wallaru too easy? This is a question that I've actually heard, spread in the community a lot recently. Wizard101 just put out a new world, Wallaru. It's in test realm. But this is also something that was on my mind. A lot of the questing felt very similar to what we've done in the past, and it didn't actually seem like it offered a challenge for someone that's at 160. I think answering the question of whether this new world is too easy actually has a lot of angles. I wanted to talk about all of the things that I think about this, and also if it truly is easy, how they could maybe make it a little bit more challenging. I think the first point that's very, very important is I think a lot of people, when they see a short world, they think that it feels easy. I think first we need to answer the question of whether Wallaru is even a short world to begin with. I could be very wrong, but just based on a couple of things, it seems like what we've currently had available to us in test realm isn't actually as high a percentage of the full world as we're used to. There will be no spoilers on the plot, but when you get to this quest, right, in the dreaming of Wallaru, there's basically a spoiler wall that prevents you from doing anything more. And yet, surprisingly, the level that you reach before you hit the spoiler wall, if you're just doing the main quest, is only 168. And it's not even like close to 169. You're about 1.5 levels away from max level, which means there's probably about a fifth of the world that's behind the spoiler wall if you just consider the sheer amount of time that you would put into it. So I think there's a very realistic chance of Wallaru's actually not that short compared to any other world in Arc 4. It seems like maybe if they were aiming for, I want to say 9 to 12 hours of content for an average player, that's probably what you're going to get out of it just from the quest line alone. And while I'd argue that something like Novus was actually long because it was dialogue heavy, I actually do feel like you get your fair share of combat in this world, and you get some beautiful scenery along the way. I really recommend for anyone who feels like this feels like a short world to not skip the dialogue. Honestly, I think they did a really good job with it this time around. There's like a mysterious vibe to it. There's like an energy. There's a lot of mysteries to unravel. They don't answer a lot of your questions up front. It's almost like they want you to figure it out before it's laid right on the table for you. And that's really cool. There's a lot of character arcs compared to what we're used to. And beyond that, if you take the time to, look at the scenery, explore, and all that type of stuff, I feel like, I don't know, this world does a great job of rewarding you for actually interacting with the ambiance. Like, I spent definitely quite a bit of time, even in the rush of wanting to be like, at the end of the quest line. I spent quite a bit of time just walking around looking at all this stuff. It doesn't feel like they just retextured a bunch of things to me this time around. I know that was like a big criticism. And I think the point I'm trying to make is the world is only short if you make it that way. At least in your first playthrough, there's no need to be in a big rush to go through the dialogue and this and that. And I think forcing yourself to play the game super fast and then going out with the opinion that this was too easy, I feel like that's actually a pretty flawed approach if you ask me. But on the topic of whether the actual difficulty is easy, right? And this is something that very unfortunately, I feel like I do agree. It does feel like things that worked in the past work equally well now, if not better. Meaning, right, literally going for like your aura into a 4-pip Dragoon hit, it gets the job done for the vast majority of the mobs that you fight. There's 3 or 4 very unique fights that do have cheats that do potentially cause issues that actually make you play a little different. But I'd argue so far in test realm, these are few and far between. One thing that I'm just kind of annoyed with is I didn't actually try to get more powerful in preparation for my walkthrough throughout the entire world, because I didn't feel like I needed to. Even the first few boss fights that I did, you could just blade and Dragoon hit. I didn't need to learn the new spells from this world. I didn't bother doing the spell quest. It's not even in my inventory. I already knew what the animations looked like, so, I didn't really feel like I needed to do it. And the new, spells from this world, they're AoEs that are more powerful that you could do first round. And yet I didn't do it because I realized that the animation time that I would waste by not using this would not be worth it, because I don't need the extra damage. If I at least needed the extra damage, okay, then the animation time is kind of irrelevant. Kind of a weird thing. It's almost like you don't actually actively want to chase power, which is really sad, because I feel like every new world, you should want to get more powerful. It shouldn't just be, oh, everything that worked in the past works just as well for most mobs, most bosses. I don't need to do anything different. That's kind of the vibe that I got with this world, and that's my one big negative. The scenery, the ambiance, the plot, and the characters are written to perfection. but the difficulty in that sense, that things worked before that work now, I don't know, it makes me feel like I lost out a little bit. And here's the thing, it's too early to give that as fair criticism that the bosses aren't unique enough, because I assume most of the really, really hard fights are behind the spoiler wall that we're left at. I think what's remaining at the end, like I guess from level 169 to 170, I feel like that's where a lot of these bosses that are challenging, that do pose unique challenges, are gonna be. And what I hope is maybe they can make those bosses in a way where it is something that's casual friendly, because that's what you need to have at the end of the day. But I also do hope that they use advanced content to offer a challenge for people that do want to fight bosses with, you know, maybe some stat restrictions, maybe some like cheats that they could like, you know, play around. I feel like they added this whole like, you know, challenge mode and advanced sigils. They've only ever done that to instances where we've already been through them, right? When they first did this update, Novus had already come out and they added like a challenge mode to the final boss in Lemuria. They added a challenge mode to the Triton boss in Imperia. And while that's cool and all, I really don't think opting to challenge yourself has been a rewarding experience, because they've always been in sigils that nobody is gonna revisit because they don't need gear from it. It'd be cool if, to get my level 170 gear, I had the option after whatever happens after the spoiler wall that we hit. It'd be cool to fight various bosses in a challenging format to get higher drop rates and also be able to go through it in a casual way. I think whenever they're answering the question of whether something's too difficult or not, it's really important that the people that work on Wiz, like, you know where that criticism is coming from. Is it coming from a player that has all of the best stats? They have raid gear, they have like insane pets with gear set bonuses? Or is it coming from what I would argue is a much more average player, someone who's been waiting for months for this world to drop, and they don't really feel like their wait was worth it because they just did, you know, the AoE click way more than they even did in previous worlds, and it felt like it was too easy to go through, right? Where you take the criticism from is very important here, and hopefully, you know, they find the healthy balance, because I'll be very honest, for me, I feel like the actual act of questing doesn't really feel as rewarding anymore. I'm genuinely in it for the scenery, the plot, the characters, you know, like actually figuring out, you know, the story writing, the narrative. That's like what I do when I engage with like my first walkthrough, which is kind of sad because I feel like it should be a healthy combination of both, right? There should be bosses to figure out how to defeat quickly, and also there should be the idea of like, you know, you're throwing yourself at the plot of a world. I think my big takeaway is I don't really care if a world is easy, if it at least feels rewarding, but I do think that Wallaru does go a little far in terms of making it a little too easy. We'll see if they do end up adding challenge modes, or if the bosses that are left to do in Test Realm are actually difficult, the ones at the end of the world. This could be a super backloaded world, and it's neither short nor easy like people are saying, so that is the one thing to remember. I'm really, really excited to see what's next. I feel like there's probably going to be dungeons that we haven't like encountered yet, but in the meantime, while we do wait for our answers on whether difficulty will enter the Wallaru experience, I urge you guys to not sell yourself short on this actual world by skipping the dialogue and not exploring. I think this is one of the worst worlds to do that to. I really think this is one of the most well-designed graphically worlds I've seen ever. Like, it looks beautiful. I genuinely enjoyed questing just for the environment that I was going through. Like, I was excited to see what the next area looked like. And I urge people to not only not deprive themselves of that, but don't conflate that with the world being too easy. But of course, I want to hear y'all's thoughts on this. Did you guys play through Wallaru and Test Realm? What did you think about the difficulty? And if you haven't played, what would you want the difficulty to be like? Like, what kind of player are you, and what kind of difficulty do you want? As always, drop a like if you enjoyed. Leave a sub if you're new. If somebody hasn't told you you're awesome today, they doing something wrong. Stay awesome. See y'all soon. And yeah.